A few of you guys know quite a lot about him already, but just for those of you who don't, he is the recipient of the American Academy of Arts and Letters Award in Literature. The Notre Dame University, you might have heard of it, they awarded him the Father Robert Griffin Award for writing, and he has, according to something I read online, so we know it's the truth, he has been anthologized in the Best American Essays more than any other American writer. So we're very, very happy to welcome Brian Doyle. But if you ask him who he is, he would tell you that he's a dad, a husband, a son, a brother, a friend, and then a writer, because that's the way he prioritizes things. So if you'll just give him your attention. Oh, one more thing. So sorry, hold that for a second. Please remember that you are not supposed to have food or drinks in here. Please follow the rules for that. Thank you. Now go.
We'll start in a minute, but first, just because we can, well, let's give Miss Morgan a roaring, whopping round of applause. And do you guys know Shirley Henderson? Does anybody remember Shirley Henderson? Shirley Henderson is the reason that we're here. She's just been released from jail, so Shirley, welcome back. Okay, let me start the right way, if you don't mind. Is this too loud, you guys? It feels like the voice of God. Put your hands where I can see them. I'm sorry. I was just visiting a grade school, and a kid said to me, "Oh, we've read so many of your essays, Mr. Doyle, and what are the few words that you've said the most to your children in your whole life?" And sweet young lady, and I'm sure she expected me to say, "I love you, honey," and I said, "Pick up that towel!" And that's the edited version of what I said to the children. So, but let's start in the right way. You don't know me from a hole in the wall, and I don't know you. And chances are good that our roads are not going to cross much in the years to come. So before I do anything else, I say thank you for your witness, for your grace, for your generosity, for your attentiveness to me. You've given me an hour of your one wild and precious life. How foolish of you, but how generous to me. Thank you so much. To have me in your home, to have me in your living room. How generous. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's sweet. Kind. So, also, I try to apologize ahead of time. My nose has been busted 3 times. Twice by my brothers. Once by my brother Peter with a 2x4. So I have a nasal mutter. Sorry. Sometimes I use bad language. I don't mean to, but it just pops out. I grew up in New York City, and I'm a professional editor, so sometimes I just say stuff. I don't mean to offend anybody. If it happens, roll with it. Sometimes I sing, which is really disturbing. My son Liam says, "When you sing, it sounds like goose farts on a muggy day." So if that happens, just roll with it. Sometimes I make you sing, which is actually pretty cool, seems to me. I think that covers all the major bases, right? Never been arrested. Been stopped by the police, but never arrested. So let me start, if you don't mind, by just trying to make you laugh for a minute. I was just visiting a grade school, 4th grade, and I was going on and on about miracles, about how miracles are pregnant in every moment. If we pay attention, every minute is stuffed with stories and miracles and grace and astonishment and amazement and wonder beyond measure. If you would just pay attention to it, right? If the doors of perception were cleansed, you would see everything as it is, infinite, says William Blake. Right? And so I know that suffering and grief and pain are part of the package, but also unbelievable grace and humor. Oh, it's in every single moment if we just paid attention to this. So I'm going on and on about my thing, right, and rattling on. So I finally finished my speech, and this kid raises her hand, girl, it's always a girl, raises her hand and says, "Mr. Boyle." I was like, so much for fame. "Mr. Boyle," I said, "What?" And she goes, "I have a question. You're going on and on about miracles. Have you seen any miracles yourself?" And you know how you just say stuff without your tack filter, it just pops out, right? Clang goes your tack filter on the ground, and you just speak right from your heart. It never ends well. I said, "Have I seen miracles?" "Heck yes, I've seen miracles. I saw people come out of my wife. There were people living inside my wife." It was bad enough when one person came out. The next time, 2 people came out at the same time. And I thought, this geometric progression is not working for me. And it was awful. I was so tired, and I saw a head where you should never see a head. And I suddenly realized, oh my God, what have I said? Oh my God. These are 4th grade kids, right? 9 years old. And so I'm in full ranting mode, right? And it was like she was an apartment building and there were people living in there without paying any rent at all. And I suddenly thought, oh, no, no. And I look up and every single child's looking at me like this. Oh, the poor teacher, all the blood had drained out of her face, you know. And she said to me later, Mr. Doyle, no offense. Do you ever notice when people say no offense, it means I'm about to offend you? She goes, Mr. Doyle, no offense, but you're the greatest birth control device ever, you know. I was like, okay, yeah. Anyway, that same class, a kid says to me, I was going on and on about story and story and story, how story is powerful, story is important, stories are nutritious, stories are holy, stories are food. We got no stories, we got nothing. This is the great cruelty of Alzheimer's, right? It's that it sucks out story, and you got nothing left but a healthy shell. And what a hell on earth that would be, to be in your healthy body with no stories inside you. That would be awful, to have nothing in your mouth to share with other people, to have no ears to dig other people's stories. Oh, it would be awful, you know? And so a kid says to me, again, a girl, she goes, okay, what are your 3 greatest stories about you, about your life? The 3 greatest things that you can say to me. The kids are so naked, right? They just say what they think. They just ask questions totally from their naked hearts. You know, and they said, I saw people come out of my lovely bride. And you want to talk about miracles? I'll tell you about miracles. People came out. You know, I got it. I got the biology. I got it. I got the anatomy. I got zygotes and cellular division and blah, 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 blah. I got all that. That's a miracle, man. Where that life came from, nobody can explain that. You can talk to me about the science all day long, and nobody can explain the miracle of that. We try to drape stuff like religion on top of something like that, and there are miracles and grace beyond measure, beyond the control of any religion. And I speak as a Catholic. We've been in business for 2,000 years, you know. So also getting down on my knees and proposing to my lovely bride. I got that. She's a little tiny woman, size of a blue heron. My brother Tommy says she's just the right size to put your beer in her head. I'm like, like that. I get down on my knees. She's a little tiny thing. I get down on my knees and she's standing up, so we're eye to eye, right? And I said, and for the first and apparently the last time in my life so far, I was completely speechless. I get down on my knees. I was like, wood. And she says, are you drunk? I was like, Mary, it's noon. Pay attention. Wood. And she goes, are you okay? You having a heart attack? I said, Mary, focus. Wood. I said, finally get it out. Like a trout, you know, will you marry me? And there's this long pause. My God, I couldn't believe, I know what a pregnant pause is now, man. I'm down on my knees thinking, oh, say something. Her face is working. She's going like this. I'm like, oh, just say something, please. You know, and she finally goes, yeah. Oh, I can't believe I said yeah. Oh my God. Oh, my mother always said if I said yeah instead of yes, there would come a time when I would really regret that. And I can't believe that time has come because I have some issues with my mother. And I'm still down there on my knees going, hello. Anybody home up there? You know. But that woman of all the women in the whole history of the world said yeah to me. Winner. Children arrive from the sea of the stars, you know. And for me, personally, September 11th, you know, and you got Dawn of Mary, right? Everybody got Dawn of Mary? You read Dawn of Mary. I've written 2 pieces. One of the classes this morning said to me, of all the stuff you ever wrote, what's the most important thing you've ever written? If everything that you ever wrote piddled away and nothing was remembered except 1 or 2 things, what would they be? And I knew right away what to say. An essay called Leap about September 11th and an essay called Dawn of Mary about December 14th. And your homework assignment today from strange old Mr. Doyle at the front of the room is you take Dawn of Mary and you read Dawn of Mary today or tomorrow. Okay, in the next 24 hours, you read that piece, and then you make 10 copies of that piece, and you give it to 10 people, and they make 10 copies of that piece, and before December 14th, everybody in our blessed, bruised country will read that piece, and it has nothing to do with Brian Doyle, and everything to do with some stories are so powerful, and so momentous, and so substantive, and so crucial that they will be remembered, or else, and that's one of them. You do not let December 14th be an anniversary. be a sad day when you pick up the paper and you listen to the radio and the television, and all day long it's, 2 years ago, the murder, gun control, blah, 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 blah. You remember Dawn and Mary. You remember something else happened that day. They were two women with courage bigger than any word can cover. Those two, you know the story? Dawn and Mary, boring staff meeting, December 14th, Sandy Hook Elementary School, boring staff meeting. I'm sure there were boring staff meetings everywhere except at Lassiter High. But, and then what do they hear at 9 in the morning? They hear pop, 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 the sound of gunfire in the hallway. The worst sound you could hear. Ask your principal, what's the worst sound you could hear in a school? The sound of gunfire echoing in the hallway. What a horror. And the principal, to her credit, jumps up and says to the rest of the teachers, you know that sound. You know what we're trained for. Do the training. Get down. Get down on the ground. Lock that door after me. And she runs out into the hallway, followed to her absolute surprise by the staff psychologist, Mary Sherback, who, according to survivors, said to Dawn Hochsprung, you're not going out there without me. Oh, God, the courage, the bony, sinewy courage of that woman. And the two women ran down the hallway right at the boy with the rifle. Right at the boy with the rifle. That rifle must have looked like a cannon as they ran right at it. Every fiber of their bodies screaming, run away! You're trained all your life, our whole evolution has been run away from danger, live another day, And they did exactly the ridiculous reverse thing. They did a thing that has no sense. There's no logic or reason in that kind of courage. But they did it anyway. And every one of us is Dawn Hochsprung and Mary Sherback. Every one of us. Of course they got their heads blown off. But don't you know those two women in their hearts? Don't you know them? Don't you know? I tell you a story, and now you know who they were. Those women I know Dawn Hochsprung like she was my best friend. She must have run down that hallway with the attitude is, you want to get to the kids in my school, pal? You go through me. Come on. Who can explain that? There's no words for this kind of a thing. Only a story. I tell you the story and you'll never forget it. You'll never forget it. And it has nothing to do with the writer and everything to do with the story, right? The same thing on September 11th. The firemen ran up that thing, knowing they would never come back down. The guy who carried a lady in her wheelchair down 40 freaking floors. You gotta be kidding me. The people who escaped from the towers and ran back in again. They turned and ran back into hell. Who would do that? That don't make any sense. But they did. And every one of us is capable of that kind of a thing. You know that seed is inside you. You know it. One of the things that happens to me all the time, somebody asked me this the other day, I was talking to a student who had read Dawn and Mary and said, yeah, would you have the courage to do what they did? I said, I don't know, man. I don't know. I hope I would. I think I would do anything for kids. I think I would. But I don't know, man. I don't know. But that seed's in there. I know it is. And it's the same with you, So stories are all I wanted to talk about today. Here I am ranting and raving already, but story, right? You don't share stories that matter. Whether they're silly or not. Silly, funny is good, humorous is good. Nobody ever punched each other while they were giggling, Nobody ever got shot while they were laughing, Stories of substance, stories of humor, stories of warmth, stories of grace, stories of laughter. They're good stories. If you don't catch and share stories like that, you got nothing but lies in your life, lies and sales pitches. And if you accept that, shame on you. If you let people tell you how to give you stories to live your life by, shame on you. What are your stories? What are the stories you live by? You know what I mean? More and more you should think about this as you get older. Look, I sound like I'm ranting and raving, but I know you. I know who you are. I was you, man. I was you. I was 18, and all I wanted to know at 18 was, a girl's going to like me. That was the big question, right? Who am I going to love, and who's going to love me? That's the great question. I know that what you think about, And all the other things that you got to like college and, jobs and cars and blah, blah, blah. I got that. But the real story is who you're going to love and who's going to love you, right? But don't let that just be the only one, right? It has nothing to do with politics and religion and marital status. It has to do with what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life. You got a gift. You were given a gift by the mercy, the coherent mercy, as Barry Lopez says. Whatever it is that you want to call the force that breathed you into the being of your mom. You got a gift. What is that gift? You know, maybe you don't know what it is. I've worked for colleges for 30 years, and one of the things I find very funny is that people walk into college thinking that they have gift A, and often they leave college not with the same gift that they walked in with, they thought. I meet a lot of pre-med students who don't walk out pre-med, you know? So what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life? You're already at the age where you're starting to push your mom and dad away a little, you know? I mean, you'll always be kind and tender to your mother, I hope. But every one of you I know has been snotty to your dad, you know, and you think your dad's some kind of a grumpy old bonehead, which he is, actually. But, you know, can I ask you one strange favor? You know, maybe tonight or tomorrow or sometime in the next few days, when was the last time you said to your Ma, I love you? And you really meant it. And you didn't say it as you ran out the door. You said, Ma, what color are your mom's eyes? You know, when was the last time you stayed into your mother's eyes and said, hey, Ma, thank you. You know, and I'll give you a little tip about your dad you don't even know. Your dad is laid awake many hours in the middle of the night thinking maybe he wasn't a good enough dad. He has, and you'll never know it. He's laid awake worrying about you, about how you're going to get your heart stomped on, and he can't save you. When you were 5, he could take care of business. He could keep you away from cars and dogs. You know, now you're going to go out there and you're getting your heart stomped on, and he can't fix that. And he worries, was he a good enough dad? Did he share enough? Was he open enough with you? Did he take care of business as much as he possibly could? I know you got tension in your family. I know you got scars on your hearts. But, you know, once in a while, just once, before you leave home, say to your dad, hey, old man, thank you. You know, we'll never really talk straight, you and me, old fella. But thank you for taking care of me. Thank you for giving me a chance. You know, give the old man one little touch on the back, for God's sake. You know, do I say this as a dad? Heck yes, I do. You know, so, well, this is already ranting and raving into evangelical territory. Sorry. I just did a reading. I was telling the kids this morning, I did a reading, and a lady comes up to me and she goes, so you Catholic? I said, yes, ma'am. We just spent an hour talking about mercy and forgiveness and, you know, and Flannery O'Connor and Andre Dubus and all the great Catholic writers. And why? And she goes, because you have a future in the evangelical church, she says. It's like, no, ma'am, my mother's on a walker, but she can hit you with that walker. So I'm not trading teams at this point, you know, and so. All right, well, let me make you laugh. My lovely bride and I, when we first moved to Oregon, she was usually pregnant. She was enormously pregnant. Women would come close to her when we went anywhere. Women would come like, oh, honey, you know, and men would back away slowly thinking this is going to have to do with hot water and towels, you know. And so she gave birth to our daughter. So we had a little family, nuclear family, husband and wife and a daughter. Oh, it's so sweet. Wham! Twin sons. You know, so we had 3 kids in diapers all at the same time. I don't remember the 90s all that well, you know. But when our sons were little, this was pinned up in our bathroom. So I read this just to make you laugh, just for sheer stupid fun. Rules for small twin boys in the bathroom. Rule number 1, point it down. Rule number 2, keep pointing it down. Rule number 3, Dad does all wiping. Rule number 4, keep pointing it down even if you're sure you're done. Rule number 5, the most important rule of your whole life, boys, look at me. Each boy points his own pointer. Can I help my brother? No, you can't help your brother. Keep your hands on your own equipment. Number 6, if spilling occurs, tell Dad. Number 7, no washing hands without Dad. Number 8, no washing anything without Dad. Number 9, no, you can't pee in the bathtub. Number 10, yes, you can pee in the bushes outside. This is Oregon, for heaven's sake. This reminds me of my son when he was little. One time I was having a beer with a friend of mine on our lawn, and he steps around the corner of the house. He looks at our car, and he goes, you know, I don't mean to pry into your personal life, but there's a small naked boy trying to mate with your car. This was my son Liam, ran around naked all the time when he was 2. And he climbed up into the car. I said to him later, what was that all about? And he goes, he decided that he was going to pee in the gas tank just because he could. I'm like, what? So I'm watching this with my friend, and he goes, aren't you going to stop him? And I said, no, I kind of admire his ambition. Because it's kind of an engineering project, you know. And so, number 12, yes, Dad has a pointer. Number 13, no, Mom does not have a pointer. Number 14, no, I don't know where Mom's pointer went. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The boys tore that down over and over again. This is when our children were little. Somebody said to my lovely bride, do you guys have a video camera? Because this is chaos. I mean, it was total hubbub in our house. And my lovely bride said, no, we have him. Because I swore I was going to write down every single thing our kids ever said, right? Because kids have that great naked They just speak from their hearts with no agenda, with a vague grasp of syntax and grammar. And so I wanted to write down everything that my kids said because it seemed holy to me that these people that I was living with, these little tiny people, were speaking so beautifully, you know. One of my kids called me Big Nose for a long time when he was little, which I thought was sort of funny, you know. So but I stumbled across this the other day. I stopped after a while because it was such an epic project. But I stumbled across this the other day. So here's some of the things my kids have said that they don't know I know they said. I told Dad I did my homework, but the teacher didn't give us any homework today, so the joke is on Dad. I'm like, what? This is my daughter at 16. You guys have not had this same surly, snotty, supercilious tone with your parents, I hope. Ready? Got that tone in your mind when you're 16, you know everything and your father's an idiot? Right? Got that tone, which you've never used, but everybody knows that tone, right? Here's my daughter. I know I said I'd be home at midnight, but I'm the one who said that. So when I decided to not be home at midnight, I was not actually late because I can change my mind. I thought my top of my head was going to fly off, you know. There's another one. I walk in the house one day, and my sons were little. They were like 6 years old, little crew cut guys, and there's a whole bunch of other little crew cut guys with them. Like they ran around in packs when they were little. And so I walk in the kitchen one morning, and there's my son Joey explaining the rules of the Doyle family to his little pack of guys. Rule number 1, wear pants. Pants are important, you know. But I walk in just as he's explaining this rule to his friends. If our dad dies, our mom has to marry his next younger brother. And if he dies, she has to marry Uncle Tommy, because he's the last brother in the family. But if Uncle Tommy dies, our mom is an unrestricted free agent. You know, I turn around and walk right back into my bedroom thinking, did I say that to the kids? What is the matter with me? You know? Dad says all beings are holy in the same proportions except the New York Yankees, who are the spawn of Satan. Did I say that? I did say that. Et cetera, et cetera. Insects rule the world, but they don't bother talking about it. Mom says camping is a way to see God up close, but Dad says God loves us and wants us to shower daily. If you find poop in the woods and it's tiny round balls, that's a rabbit. If the balls are larger, that's a deer or an elk. If they're larger than that, you should come home right away. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let me read a couple more and then ask me questions, because I really want to be of help to you. I want to be of assistance to you in your work, okay? So let me read you one more piece. This is, I wrote a big honking novel years ago, and after the novel was done, you're supposed to get up and do readings and stuff and speak knowledgeably about your novel. But I wrote my novels first and then think about them afterwards, right? And I worked so hard to stitch all the pieces together so that the story would be coherent and unflappable, that to find a piece to read was impossible. It was really hard for me to find a piece to read. But there's one part in the book, there's a guy in the book who's got 13 days to live. And then so all through the book, he's got fewer days to live. He knows the hour of his death. He knows that he will die on page 300. And so a young guy, when he's down at the end of his life, he's got like 3 days to go in his life, and a young guy says to him, hey man, what mattered in your life? Really and truly, what mattered to you? And do not give me faith, family, and friends. Don't give me that. Answer the question for real. What mattered to you, really and truly? And the old man says, hawks huddled disgruntled against hissing snow, wrens in winter thickets, swallows carving and swimming and slicing fat grinning summer air, blueberries, blackberries, gooseberries, my children learning to read, the sinuous liquid flow of rivers and minks and cats, fresh bread with way too much butter, my children's hands when they cut my ancient grizzled face in their hands, exuberance and ebullience, tears of sorrow which are the salt seas of the heart, sleep in every form from doze to bone weary, the shivering ache of a saxophone and the yearning of an oboe, folding laundry hot from the dryer, cobblers and tailors, spotless kitchen floors, the way horses smell in spring, postcards in which the sender has written so much that he or she can barely squeeze in a signature, opera on the radio, toothbrushes, the postman's grin, the green sifting powdery snow of cedar pollen on the porch every year, the way herons labor through the sky with such vast elderly dignity. People who care about hubcaps, the cheerful ears of dogs, all photographs of every sort, tip jars, wine glasses, the way barbers sweep up circles of hair after haircuts so politely, so courteously, handkerchiefs, libraries, poems read aloud by older poets on the radio, fedora hats, excellent knives, the very idea of albatrosses and thesauruses, The tiny screws that hold spectacles together. Book marginalia done with the lightest possible pencil, as if the reader is whispering to the writer. People who keep dead languages alive. Wooden rulers, fresh mown lawns. First baseman's mitts. Dish racks, the way my sons smell after their baths, the moons of Jupiter, all manner of boats, the fact that our species produced Edmund Burke, naps of every size, junior policeman badges, walruses, cassocks, surplices, the orphan caps of long lost, pens in that drawer that every one of us has in the kitchen. Cabbages and kings, all manner of bees, eulogy and elegy, fingernail clippers, the rigging of sailing ships, ironing boards, the mysterious clips that girls wear in their hair so that when you kiss them from behind, the clip explodes in your face. Camas and canvas, bass and bluefish, furriers and farriers, trout and grout, peach pies of every size. The sprawling porches of old hotels and the old men asprawl upon them. The snoring of children, the burble of owls, the sound of my daughter typing her papers for school in the other room, the sound of my sons wrangling and wrestling and howling and yowling, all sounds of whatever tone or tenor issue from my children in all other forms of coupled pain and joy, which is to say everything alive, which is to say all prayers, which is what I just did. Amen. I like that piece. That's better than a stick in the eye, as my brother Tommy says. So, all right. Well, I feel like I'm lecturing too much, so why don't you ask me questions, and we'll see what happens. You can ask me about my nose. The best question I ever got from a student was a kindergarten. I was just a visiting writer in a kindergarten, and each kid could ask me one question, and one little girl raises her hand, again, a girl, raises her hand and says, yeah, I got a question. Is that your real nose? I was like, what? I said, yeah, why? And you know how kids just say what's in their hearts? You know, she goes, I said, yeah, why? And she goes, well, it's really big, and it has a turn at the end. I said, well, it's a Roman nose. It's Roman all over my face, you know. So, but I just visited. I carry two of the questions that these kids asked me. As a visiting writer, these kids had read my novel, a 320-page novel. These kids had had it read to them every day for story time for a year. Unbelievable. You know, and at the end of the year, the author comes to visit, right? Huge disappointment for the children. One kid says to me, you can't be the author of that book. I said, why is that? And he goes, you're not tall enough. I was like, what? There's a height requirement for novelists? Who knew? You know? But each kid could ask me one question. So these two I carry in particular. Is that your real nose? Stays with me. But this was from Gautam, age 6. Dear Mr. Doyle, thank you for the story of your life about my novel. I like it because you showed me you can write long sentences. Thanks, sincerely, Gautam. But the best of all, the one I think I'll carry the rest of my life, is from my boy Alexander, age 5. Alexander, how do you write your letters so tiny to fit all those words on the page? They totally lied to him. I have a little tiny typewriter and, and a little tiny lady inside the typewriter, and he starts writing it down. I was like, no, don't write that. No. So the other thing I carry with me, by the way, I carry these things in my wallet. This is a friend of mine. This is a young man named Paul Stahaley. Paul Stahaley is a colonel in the United States Army. Paul Stahaley has been in Iraq twice, 2 tours in Iraq, 1 tour in Afghanistan. Paul Stahaley is an Army Ranger. Nobody can question this kid's patriotism or courage. Nobody. Paul Stahaley, my university gave him our highest alumni award last year, and I said to him, can I ask you a blunt question, not to be rude, but career Army, why? Why are you in the Army? And he goes, Mr. Doyle, my job is to put my job out of business. I about fainted. And he goes, my job is to make a world, everybody's pretty much the same, Mr. Doyle. My job is to make a world where someday a kid asks his grandfather, what does the word gun mean? That's my job. Everybody's pretty much the same, Mr. Doyle. Black, white, gay, straight, Muslim, Christian, everybody's pretty much the same. They want to put food on the table for their kids. They don't want to get shot at, and they want to have a job. That's pretty much where everybody's coming from in the whole world. And my job is to make that world more possible. My job is to take the lunatic fringe who wants to not make that world possible for some people and put them out of business. That's my job. If I do my job right, pretty soon there will be no United States Army. That's my job. I about had a heart attack. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. It was so eloquent, man. And nobody can question this guy's courage or patriotism, or has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with possibility. You know what I mean? The greatest line ever written in the state of Oregon, where I've lived for 30 years, was not by Ken Kesey, the great Ken Kesey, or Barry Lopez, or Ursula Le Guin, or God help us all, Brian Doyle. It's written by William Stafford, who was the poet laureate of the United States when he was in Oregon. Violence is a failure of the imagination. Violence is a failure of the imagination. There's got to be another way. There's got to be another way. You know, I was telling the students this morning, 3 of my friends were murdered on September 11th. Tommy Crotty, Farrell Lynch, Sean Lynch. Big, good, strapping, goofy Irish boys. Tommy Crotty was a college basketball player, one of the best basketball players I ever played with. You know, the kind of guy, if he's on your team, you love him. If he's on the other team, you want to hit him with a rock. That kind of ball player, right? Farrell Lynch and Sean Lynch, brothers. Big strapping guys, bar bouncers when they were young, became brokers in the towers, right? And for a long time after September 11th, I kept thinking, their wives sleep alone. There's a hole in the bed where the husband was. You know what I mean? And every mattress, if anybody's there long enough, there's a hole. And every night, the wives must reach over and feel the hole where the man used to be. And every day the kids are serving one less plate at the table. Every day is September 12th for them people. Every day, every single day, the kids put 3 plates on the table instead of 4. You know, and for a long time, for months after September 11th, I was enraged and filled with rage and vengeance and fire. And I wanted to bring that same kind of fire and ash and horror and terror to him. Bin Laden, you slime, hiding in your cave somewhere. I'll find you and I will haunt you. I will bring you down, you know. And then I realized, what am I talking about? What am I talking about? He kills my friends, I'm going to kill him and his friends. This is an ancient story. When is this going to stop? You know, my own daughter called me on it. You know, she goes, Dad, you're always saying that violence is a failure of the imagination and violence is a sin and lashing out in violence it's not productive. You say so yourself. You say it all the time. And Dad, how come you're not writing anything about your friends? I said, well, I don't know what to say. I don't want to add to the ocean of witless commentary and vengeful prose in the world. And then finally, you know, I mean, I came home one day. I remember a magazine asked me to write a piece about September 11th. They scrapped their editorial calendar like every other magazine, right? Oh, we'd like you to contribute to a special issue about September 11th. I said, no, stupid, no. And so I'm saying this in the kitchen to my lovely bride. My daughter was probably 9. She goes, really? What are you going to do then? I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, Dad, you're always lecturing us if you get a tool, you have a tool and you don't use your tool, that's a sin. And Dad, no offense. There it is again, no offense. You know, you only have one tool. You say so yourself. The only thing you're any good at is catching and sharing stories. That you stink at everything else. So if you're not going to use your tool, isn't that a sin? And in fact, isn't that 3 sins because your 3 friends have got murdered? And I'm thinking, go to your room. But then I realized she was right? I mean, so I found myself desperately looking for stories. And so the firemen who ran up that day, the guy who carried the lady down in her wheelchair, you know, the people who ran out of the towers and turned and went back into the towers. A friend of mine was a fireman that day. As soon as he's watching this on TV with horror. How old were you guys? 3? 2? 4? Oh my God. Was anybody in kindergarten even? Oh, geez, Louise. And did you all remember this? Did you all see this on TV? Did your mom and dad say, oh my God, come watch this? Oh, geez, the sin. But the stories that I finally realized, I'm fighting back by telling stories. I'm fighting back, and I've been writing about it ever since, about the unbelievable grace and courage that day. A friend of mine was a fireman that day, and I asked him 2 questions. A, were you guys going to put out a fire on the 108th floor? And he goes, no. I said, then why the hell did you run up? Why? Why did those guys run up knowing that they would never come back down again? He goes, we don't have a word for that, do we, Brian? You're a writer, Brian. Why don't you find out? Why don't you find a new word? And I've been looking for that word ever since. And the same thing with Dawn and Mary. What's the word I'm supposed to say about Dawn Hock-Sprung? What word covers that? Duty, honor, responsibility, occupation, avocation, principles, responsibility? What a bunch of nonsense. The unbelievable guts and courage of somebody like that. And the same thing on September 11th. You know, the guy who caught a baby, the college football player caught a baby. Lady running away from the killer cloud. Guy steps out, sees what's going on, steps back behind the wall to avoid the cloud, and then said on the radio, I heard him say on the radio, all my life, I'll regret that I stepped back. But then he had the guts to step forward, right? After about a second, he realized, no, And he steps forward right into the path of the cloud and says to the lady, "Throw me the baby." He shouted it as loud as he could, "Throw me the baby!" And the mother's booking along. She's going to save that baby no matter what. She's got the maternal thing. And so she throws in the baby, and he catches the baby. This guy was a college football player, and he said later, I realized every one of those weightlifting sessions, every one of those practices, every one of those two-a-days in the summertime, it was all for this moment. It was all for the moment when I made the catch, And did you hear about the guy at the Pentagon? This guy, Sergeant Chris Bremen. I'll never forget it. Sergeant Chris Bremen. Bang! We forget, the Pentagon, 198 people died in the Pentagon, murdered. It wasn't death or killed, murder. Somebody set out to kill somebody else, slime. So this guy, Army Sergeant Chris Bremen, he realizes, deal with the problem. He hears the plane crash and realizes, major, major, major trouble. Deal with the trouble. So he runs outside. He realizes, of course, this is a 4-story building, the Pentagon, right? People are going to be jumping from the windows to try to survive. So he goes out and he stands under a window and he says, I'm driving along, listen to this. He says, I caught in this order a small woman, a slight woman, a small man, and an imposing woman. I started laughing because it was so funny. He says, I look up, there's this woman in the window, standing in the window, and he goes, she was an imposing woman. And he yells up at her. She's hesitating, and he's like, he yells up, jump, jump, jump! And she yells down, I am really fat! And he yells up, I said jump now! And she jumps, and the guy on the radio is like, well, now she's coming down, and I thought it was an eclipse of the sun. I didn't see very clearly for a minute there, so I braced myself and I made the catch, he said. But my back has been all a mess ever since. And on the radio with him is the woman. It's the woman, unbelievable. And the two of them are laughing to fit the band. Unbelievable. They're bursting out laughing. And I was like, oh my God. I had to pull over because laughing and crying at the same time. The woman says, yeah, Sergeant Chris Bremen, he put his hands where no man but my husband has ever had his hands before. I was choking with laughter, and then crying at the same time. I mean, the courage of people like this. Oh my God. My friend who was the fireman, I said to him, how'd you get to the fire? And he goes, I didn't. I hopped in my car, rushed to the firehouse. He was like 15 miles out of New York City. And he goes, we got in our truck, man, and we went like a bat out of hell down the highway as fast as we could go, right at ground zero. Right at the single place on earth that day you did not want to be near, right? And I said, what happened? He goes, well, we spent the night in the truck. I said, what? Why? And he goes, didn't you know? Every road for hours around New York City that day was so crammed and clogged with people rushing to help that people slept in their cars. People slept in their trucks. Those trucks and cars were filled with nurses and nuns and sailors and soldiers and EMTs and doctors. Oh man, everybody rushing to help people who desperately needed help, no matter what, And today, if I would say anything to bin Laden, I would say, you poor fool, you fool. Don't you understand? I got stories bigger than your story. Your story is small and mean, my friend. Your story is a joke. Your story is an old, stupid story that people have been telling for a long time. And I am here to tell you that your story is going out of business, my friend. Loser, your story is a loser story. My story is about the courage and grace inside people. My story is about mercy and courage that don't make sense. I'll tell you 100 stories about people who are braver and bigger than you, you fool. First of all, you want to kill people to make people believe what you believe is poor human resource management. Stupid. Okay, we tried that in the Catholic world. We call it the Crusades. It didn't work. Second of all, you're going to scare people into believing like you believe. It doesn't work that way. You hurt people, they will come back harder. And most of all, your story is old and mean. Your story has to do with death and fear and terror, and that story is a joke. And my generation and your generation is going to make that happen. Violence is a failure of the imagination, right? Your job is to find a way to make war ever more small until finally it's in a freaking museum someplace. That's your job. You can do it too. You can do it. I know you can. You got a wild gift, every one of you do. What will you do with your one wild and precious life, as Mary Oliver says, right? Don't take this for granted. I know you're going to college. I know you're going to get jobs, blah, 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 blah. But you can tell stories. You can catch and share stories. If they're silly, good. If they're funny, good. You know, if they're about grace and courage, good. If they're about mercy and forgiveness, good. If they're about forgiveness beyond sense, good. All the better. You know, Desmond Tutu is just on my campus. Desmond Tutu, oh my God, Desmond Tutu. My campus in the last year, we had the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. Okay, my father said, what, you couldn't get any Catholics? I was like, Dad, stop. What are you, a visiting pagan program? My father says. I said, Dad, stop. You know, but Desmond Tutu's on my campus. You ever hear Tutu speak? Right, Tutu's in Atlanta all the time, right, visiting Carter. Did you ever hear him speak? He has the highest pitched voice I've ever heard in a human male. Desmond Tutu. You know, he sounds like a chipmunk on acid or something, you know. Desmond Tutu. You know, he's got this little tiny giggle. You know, Desmond Tutu. And so he's in this room packed with students, all about your age. And all these students are banging questions at him fast and furious. You know, Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. Mandela and Tutu saved 1 million people from being killed. Hello? That's not bad. Good use of a life, I would say. There should have been a terrible, vengeful massacre of the whites in South Africa. It didn't happen. Interesting, because of these two guys, I'm convinced. So all the kids are banging questions at Tutu one after another about this, and Tutu's doing his best to answer them, right, and giggling about it. And finally, one girl, again a girl, raises her hand and says, I got a question. What is the point of human evolution? And Tutu bursts out laughing, hee, you know, like a chipmunk on helium or something, you know. It's the funniest thing I've ever heard. And he starts laughing. He goes, oh, I cannot answer that. It's a large question. Oh, I cannot. And suddenly something came over him, and he stops, and he reaches out and goes over to the girl, and he cups her face in his hands and says, I cannot answer your question. Daughter, I cannot answer your question, he said, but I will tell you a story. A very interesting line. It's like a Zen koan. Think about that for a while. I can't answer your question. I have no words, but I'll tell you a story. Okay? And then he goes, I have seen with my own naked, holy eyes forgiveness granted in unforgivable situations. I have seen with my own eyes murderers kneel down in front of people, the families of the people they have murdered, and beg forgiveness with every fiber of their being. And I have seen the families of the murdered grant forgiveness unthinkably to the people who murdered their son, their daughter, their wife, their husband, their father, their mother, their brother, their sister. I have seen this, and I have seen this not once, but many times, he said. And none shall gainsay me. A line I'll never forget. None shall gainsay me. I have seen this with my own eyes. And there was a pause, and then he goes, does that answer your question? And then, you know, and I was like, oh my God, I thought the hair was going to fly off my head. You know, I was like, oh, wow, there's a place beyond justice, you know? I mean, someplace out behind justice, there's some kind of forgiveness that makes violence just look small and stupid, you know? And I want to get to there, and you're going to help me. So, anyway. Well, now I'm really in full rant and raving mode. All right, why don't I stop that and you ask me questions now? How can I help you, most of all? I really want to help you. I can help you when you're writing. I don't know much about anything. I'm not wise. But I am a professional writer and a professional editor, so I can help you in your writing. I know you're story junkies, or else you wouldn't be here, right? You're not just in this class to get college credit so you can get a 4.5 and go to the University of Notre Dame. Total respect for UGA, but you're here because you're story-addled, aren't you? You're here because stories matter to you, because you're interested in writing, because you're interested in there's a little thrill that happens when you get it right, when you type, right? By the way, this is not the way to go, okay? This is Loserville. This is the Los Angeles Lakers and the New York Yankees. Slimy, evil. This is the Celtics. Here we go. We have winners, okay? This is how you write stuff that matters. This is how your girlfriend dumps you. It's not you, it's me. No, it's you. One of the great useful lies in the world. It's not me, it's you. Yeah, baloney. So anyway, fire away. How can I ask you? Yes, ma'am. Say it again. I didn't hear it. Wait. Here comes the Oprah Winfrey mic. Oh, so you've been married 8 times.
Do you go through periods where you can't write, and when you do, how do you get past them?
That's a great question. I don't get writer's block quite, because I have low expectations. You know, there's a great line, the second greatest line ever written in Oregon was from William Stafford also, who said, "When in doubt, lower your standards." It's a very useful line to live by, but especially so as a writer. So if I'm banging away, if I take an idea out for a walk and I feel it going lifeless, it's not working, I either stop and play with something else, or I let it be what it is. Like sometimes if I realize I've written 3 books of proems, I call them, and often what happens, I just take an idea out for a walk, and it just wants to be a short, quick, catching a moment. You know, a lot of my poems are all about just some little tiny thing. I just want to catch and sing it. You know, like the way the dog backs into you to get a scratching, you know, and the way when you ask, like you all have dogs, right? Nobody has cats. Cats are Kobe Bryant. Ugh. It's a total respect for cats. But, you know, when you talk to your dog's like, uh-huh, is there any food involved? No? Okay. You know, but little tiny things like that, and often for me, those are poems. So I have low expectations of my work. You know, I never set out to write anything in particular. I just set out to take an idea out for a stroll and see what happens. Like I'll have an idea, or somebody will tell me something, or I'll hear something, and I just want to play with it right away. If I give you any advice as a writer, number 1, do it immediately. Take a note. Oh, I'll remember that tomorrow. No, you won't. Oh, if you have a great idea at 1 in the morning. Oh, boy, I'll remember that. I'll work on that in the morning. No, you won't. You know, you won't. Not even you with ferocious memories. You know, take a note. Leave a little trail for yourself. B, stop thinking. Okay? This is a huge sin with young writers in particular, I think, is you think too much and you explain too much and you're too careful. Okay? Once you know the tools and you can use the tools, stop thinking about it. Just take it out for a stroll. Tell me a story. Tell me a story. Do not write an essay, or I'm going to write a poem, and you can hear the capital P on it, you know, and don't do that. Just sit out and have fun. You know, so I always have like 3 things going at the same time, and I always have one big honking project that I'm supposed to be doing, like a novel, and then often I find my energy goes giggling off in the other direction. Hee! I've written more fine essays because I'm supposed to be working on my novel. So, but let the energy go. Follow where your goofy thing wants to go there, right? Don't do stuff because you're supposed to. I know you got to do that in school, but if you really want to be a writer, sit your butt in the chair every day. That's another piece of advice. You want to be a writer? Sit down and type. Okay, again, this is not going to help you. This is going to help you. You know, my father says there's writers and there's talkers about writing. You want to be a writer? Sit your butt in the chair. Try to work every day. You know, just show up. Keep showing up. And take an idea out for a stroll, and don't control it. Just let it happen, man. If it's going lifeless, put it down and start another piece. Don't have expectations about it, you know. So me, I try to defend against myself by always having a few things going on at the same time. Something's always alive, it seems to me, you know, whether or not it's just a little thing. And I have a weird thing that I have to write something every day. I feel like I'm not really fully grown up unless I wrote a little something, you know. I mean, some days it's a letter to my mom, but I get credit, and I can, you know, send a picture to my brothers saying, oh, you guys are all losers today because I wrote to Ma. So anyway. Other questions? How can I help you? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to try not to ramble. Okay, so this is really weird on the microphone. Okay, so how is it that you can be so real to high school students when you know, I mean, some of them are mature enough and secure enough to connect with you when you're telling them real things that they understand.
So you're talking about the girls?
Yeah. But then you have the ones that haven't really matured enough to that, the ones that are insecure, where you're saying things that are real to them and they can't show others that they care about it, and that, you know, they roll their eyes, and even if they do care, then they can't show any other people that they do because they're too cool.
Because I know my own limitations, right? I know I'm not wise. I'm not an authority. I'm not cool. I'm just an old man, you know. But I got some stuff that's for real to share, and whether or not I see you digging it, it doesn't matter to me, as much as I'm going to give you. I want to remind you of something you already know, that stories matter. And there are some stories, if you don't live, you got to steer by some stories, man. Like I was just telling a class this morning, I was in Australia recently, a kid said to me, yeah, what's the great American story? What's the single most American story? You go ahead, tell me. And for once I had the right answer in my mouth. I said, oh, I'll tell you, January 1, 1863, 12:01 a.m., my friend. As of that moment, no more selling people in my country. No more. No more going into the village green and sticking your fingers inside some guy's mouth and feeling his teeth to see if he has, you should take him home and use him like a horse. No more going down to the village green and staring at a naked girl thinking maybe you'll buy her. No more going down to the village green and buying babies. No more. You do that, you go to jail. That was a pretty good day, I thought, in my country. As of that moment, things changed and went in a different direction. Are we all the way there? Hell no, we're not. You know, are we going to get there? I hope so. I hope so. But boy, we got a good head start that day, you know. So something like that. I feel like I got that to tell you, man, and you know what I'm talking about. And if you show me that you dig it, good, we're teammates. If it get buried inside you someplace and it opens up later, good by me, you know, because it ain't about me. I was telling the class this morning, it was an epic shock I got when I was like 29, 30 years old. I suddenly realized, oh my God, it's not all about me. Huh, what a bummer. Because it was all about me, you know, and it was a huge shock to realize, oh my goodness, everybody else is more interesting than me. What a bummer. But it was actually hugely useful to me as a man, and especially so as a writer, because it really made me stop writing all about myself all the time, and it made me wake up and realize, oh man, there's a million stories out there. My job is not to tell you about me. I'm a doofus. My job is to witness story after story after story after story and share those stories. Dawn and Mary, the people on September 11th, the rules for small twin boys in the bathroom, that's a good story. You know, it made people laugh. Nothing wrong with laughing, you know, and so my attitude is if I scatter some seeds and some of them land, great. If some of them don't, great. You know, and if this to you is an hour and a half totally wasted and you should have been doing your anatomy homework, swell, I totally understand. My kids feel that way, you know, but if not, good. You know, if you got a little shiver someplace inside yourself, if all you do today is remember Dawn and Mary, fine by me. That's fine by me. I did good then, right? You know, I mean, I just want to hit, and I want to stay on your good side. I really do think you're going to run the world, and I want to stay on your side, you know? So you take care of me when I'm old, okay? My kids keep saying to me, yeah, we'll take care of you. We're going to tie you out back and give you a bowl of whiskey once a day. I'm like, okay, that works. So, is that an answer? Because life's short. I mean, are we really going to be honest with each other? Because life's really short. And I'll be damned if I will stand here and deliver a bunch of blowhard nonsense to you. Because I want to tell you stuff that's real. I want to tell you stuff that's naked and holy and wild and powerful. Because you know what I'm talking about. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know. That's what I want. I just want to get up and connect to you as best I can. And it has nothing to do with my ego, you know, which is healthy enough, I'm sure. But I want to tell you something that's real, you know, that you're going to have all your life, that you steer by. If you're an American and you don't steer by January 1, 1863, you're a freaking fool. You ought to pay attention to the goodness of our country. Have we done violent, corrupt, evil, stupid things in America? You bet we have. We're a world champion at stupid. But by God, we have done great things. And we will do more great things. And it has to do with creativity and mercy and humility, not with violence. Paul Stahaley's right, you know? Violence is a joke, and we're going to lose that joke book. And we're going to be leaders we're going to be the first among many countries who says, no more, we got a better way. We're going to outwit violence. How are we going to deal with ISIS, Mr. Doyle? We're going to outwit those stupid fools. That's what we're going to do. We're going to find a way to make them a joke, you know? More and more, who knew? I used to write a whole bunch of pieces about bin Laden. I finally realized he was a guy. It was an epic epiphany for me. I realized, oh, he's a guy. I know guys. And he's that arrogant, blowhard kind of guy who thinks he's important. And whatever he says is important, right? And the only way you can get at a guy like that is to stick the needle of humor into him, like Twain. Twain was great at it. And so I wrote a whole bunch of pieces making fun of him. And we'd publish them in our local paper and then copy it and send it to bin Laden. You know, Osama bin Laden, Pakistan. Who knew he was living in a mini mansion? But, you know, my poor lovely bride was horrified. Oh my God, what if he issues a fatwa? I was like, against an essayist? I don't think so. What if he comes for you? I was like, really, dragging his kidney dialysis machine? I've had 7 back surgeries. What are we going to do? Spit on each other? You know. So, my father says, I horrified the class this morning. My father says the solution to international conflict is strip chess, which is a really disturbing idea, you know. George Bush and Saddam Hussein could have solved a lot of problems by locking themselves in a room and playing strip chess. I was like, Dad, that's disturbing. It's a horrifying image, you know. So anyway, because I know who you are for real, I guess, is the answer to your question. I know who you are for real. I know who you are, you know, and I dig you. I dig you. There's nothing more important in the whole world than tall, lanky kids. You know, we say one thing about kids in our society, and we do another, and it haunts me. We say family, if I hear one more politician get up with his beautiful hair and say, family values, I'm gonna get myself a 33-inch bat and hit him in the shins until he says, I will go feed children. I will find the children who don't have a place to sleep in the state of Georgia and find a place for them to sleep tonight. How many hungry children you got in your state, huh? You know how many in my state? 100,000 children don't have enough to eat today. Shame on me. Shame on me. Family values my butt. You know, family values, really? Then find food for the kids who can't eat. Find clothes for the kids who don't have enough clothes to wear today who are cold. You know, don't use it as a slogan or some stupid campaign flag to wrap yourself in to get votes so you can get richer. Use your talents to feed children. Use your talents to jazz tall children. You have young men and women who are going to go out there and change the universe with your gifts. You don't even know what your gifts are yet. Good for you. Find out what they are. Why did God invent college? It's to find out what will you do with your one wild and precious life. What is your tool? You know, I met a guy recently who invented a heart valve that saved 500,000 lives. You know. And I said to him, what would you say to the kids who are now you? He did this when he was 25. He had an idea. He suddenly thought, oh my God, if I do it the other way around, this blah, blah, blah. And he saved 500,000 lives. He goes, I would tell them, find out the gift that you were given, learn how to use it, learn how to shape it and wield it, and then get out there and use it. Go, use it. You know, find out what you're great at. Maybe it's not what you think that you're great at. Maybe it's not even something that you want to be great at. You know, maybe you got a gift that you don't really want. You know, use it. Find out what it is and milk it and run with it. You know, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. This is not some old baloney coming from the stage. I'm telling you, it's for real. You know, find out what it is, man. If you're going to college, use college to find out what your gift is for. You know, I know it's love and who loves me and who am I going to love. I got that. But there's something even beyond that, you know. The best things that ever happened to me is a woman said, yeah, and my children came from the stars. You know, if I had to die tomorrow, I would die as the luckiest man who ever lived because I got to live with those people, you know. But by God, I hope I don't die tomorrow because I want to catch some more stories and share them and jazz people and change their lives a little bit maybe, just a little bit. That's all I wanted to do today is change things a little tiny bit maybe. And you were awake for that? Good. I know you were awake for that because you were in freaking Beth's class. You know, why does everybody sign up for Miss Morgan's class? The Harley Davidson tattoo, that's why. So anyway, well, there's a long answer to a short question, so sorry. The other questions, how can I help you without ranting and raving? Yes, sir. It's like Oprah Winfrey. So you used to be a tomato. Tell us about that.
How and when did you know you wanted to be a writer, and where did you start? Like, what did you do to start out writing?
Actually, grade school kids love to ask me this exact question, like, how did you become a writer? And they think like it was like St. Paul on the road to Tarsus or something, you know. Well, I fell off a horse, and you know. In my case, I was really lucky. I grew up in an Irish-American family, so a Catholic Irish-American family. So that's three cultures that are totally addicted to stories, right? Grew up in a large family, so if you didn't have a story in your mouth, my mother didn't know your name. Right? We're not sure my brother Tommy's name, even to this day. My mother still runs through the whole family to get to Tommy. Seamus, Kevin, Petra, Tommy. Tommy. 49 years old, she don't even know my name, my brother Tommy says. We're like, yeah, what is your name? I hate you guys. Also, my dad was a newspaper man, and my mother was a teacher. So there's even more stories going on, right? And my dad was a professional story catcher. That's his job, story collector. And my mother was a story fomenter, right? That's what teaching is really, is to draw you out of yourself, right? The poor teacher pours stuff into you. The great teacher lures you out of your shell toward ideas, right? Isn't that right? Am I right? So I was totally addled by this. And then vividly, I remember when I was 11 years old, I remember writing a short story. And it was the worst short story ever in the history of the universe. But I finished it. It was unbelievably awful. But I finished it, and I thought to myself, oh, those words and those sentences were never in that order before in the whole history of the world. I couldn't get over it, and I still can't get over it. I mean, every time I finish a piece, I write an essay, and I'll get to the end, and first I go over things to make, I run through my thing, and ask me about that in a minute. But I finish it, and I'm like, those words were never in that order before. Isn't that so cool? That's like so cool. I just can't get over it. I feel like a word carpenter. Like I finish a piece, and I'm like, I just did a nice piece of work. I built a little table, except my tables go into people's hearts, which I think is really cool. And so I think a lot of it was my dad being a newspaper man. I was just totally entranced by the fact that you could go around and ask people questions and collect their answers and get paid for it. That just seemed like a really cool dodge to me. My great dream when I was your age was I was going to be a professional basketball player. And my father, bless his soul, said, really, because I've not noticed that the NBA is dominated by 5'10" guys with glasses and ponytails. I was like, yeah, well, it's going to be. And then I realized about 2 days later, he's telling me get a grip. And then Allen Iverson comes along, 5'10", 160. What a bummer. Anyway. But I think that a lot of it was I got really lucky as a child. That stories were all around, and all kinds of stories. Irish and Catholic and American and books. Our house was filled with books, and newspapers and magazines. And I was just completely entranced by stories and how you trade stories back and forth. My grandparents were gifted storytellers. I mean, we grew up speaking Gaelic in my house, so they would tell stories in Irish. And everybody would laugh. So I learned Irish just to be able to understand why they were all laughing. I figured they're telling dirty jokes. I know they are, and I want to be able to know what they're talking about, So, other questions? How can I help you? Yes, ma'am. Is there a writer that inspires me the most? Yes. Most of all, more than anybody else in the whole world, Robert Louis Stevenson. I just think Robert Louis Stevenson is the greatest writer who ever wrote our language. An unbelievable novelist, a masterful essayist. He wrote probably the single most popular book of poems ever in our language, Child's Garden of Verses, which your mother read to you, I'm sure, as a child, right? Oh, an unbelievable writer. When I feel clogged and stupid as a writer, I go reread Stevenson, Twain, I think the greatest American writer, E.B. White, also an unbelievably great American writer that people don't really mention often enough, Flannery O'Connor from Georgia, Milledgeville, Georgia, with a dark, nasty sense of humor. She always cheers me up. That's about it, I think. Annie Dillard, the great Annie Dillard, but most of all Stevenson. When I go back and read Stevenson for the verve and immediacy and honesty of his prose. There's just something. He has no illusions and no agenda. Even in his great novels, Treasure Island and Kidnapped and Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, nobody ever wrote better about the darkness and the light inside every being than Robert Louis Stevenson. When was the last time you read Jekyll and Hyde? It's about every person. Every one of us has bolts of unbelievable courage and light, and also greediness and darkness. Every one of us has that inside of us, And Stevenson wrote beautifully about that you have to wrestle with your dark. You do. Nobody's a hero or a villain. It doesn't work that way. Even Bin Laden, poor Pol Pot, poor Mao, poor Hitler, poor Stalin, At some point they must have been, clean, tall, hopeful boys, and all of them bent and twisted and went in the wrong direction. Someplace they couldn't find the right story. What a shame. Same thing with poor Adam Lanza. On December 14th, right? Nobody will remember Adam Lanza as anything but a foul murderer. And poor Adam Lanza. You know the story of Adam Lanza? Nobody sat with Adam Lanza at the cafeteria table in the high school. Not once. Nobody ever sat with him. Why? He was a geek. He was a dork. He didn't smell good. He wore bad clothes. He had zits. He didn't speak very well. He wasn't funny. He wasn't witty. He was a terrible athlete. He was a joke. Nobody sat with him. Nobody ever sat with him. Not once. Is there a kid like that in your school? The story of Bin Laden? 6'4", 140 pounds. A joke of an athlete. Terrible athlete. Kids laughed at him on the soccer field. What if, man? What if? What if somebody had sat with Adam Lanza just once? Maybe history takes a turn, you know? What if? What if Osama bin Laden wasn't one of 52 children his father knew his name? His father didn't even know his name. He's born richer than sin. Before he was even born, he was richer than sin. What a trap. A lot of money, you know? To have more money than you know what to do with. What a waste of your time. You'd have to think about money. What a bummer, you know? Anyway. So, the short answer, Stevenson. Also Twain, you know, don't forget, we made Mark Twain. On dark days as an American, I think, we made Flannery O'Connor, Abraham Lincoln, Mark Twain, and Bruce Springsteen. Okay, so we win. You know, country-wise, we're kicking butt. So, other questions? Yes, sir. When I wrote my novel, how did I start? Well, the real honest answer is I told my lovely bride while we were recording that I wrote fiction. This was a whopping lie. But it seemed to make her more amorous, so then we got married, and I realized, ooh, I have to write fiction. So every writer wants to write a novel. I don't know why. It's like a venial sin that you have to commit. You know, so every writer sets out to write a novel. And so I struggled for a long time writing my novel. You know, I wrote 100 pages, 200 pages, and it was totally useless. It was lifeless. And all the characters were just puppets, you know, and I'm moving the puppets around. And I finally had an epiphany one day. I realized I'm not a novelist. I'm an essayist. I love the essay, the small, true story. I just adore that form because it's the closest to the voice. The essay is the closest to the speaking voice, I think. You know, the essay has no adornment, has no filter. Right? All the other forms have some filter. Poetry is like, I'm a poem. You know, poetry has this kind of artsy-fartsy thing. I'm a poem. You know, and fiction has this like, I'm made up. There's this little tiny guy on your shoulder. It's made up. You know, and journalism has this sort of false, I will tell you the facts. And whereas the essay is like, oh my God, I'll tell you a story. The essay has this blunt, naked thing. So I finally realized I'm an essayist. And I thought, well, I'll just write a small true story every day about these characters, right? And that was a huge epiphany for me. Then it started to go, and I realized, let go of the characters, let go. Let them run. Let them do what they want. And I had to let go. Like it was like being a dad. I realized I got to let go. It's like your dad is facing right now is he can't control things. He can't tell you what to do anymore, you know? I mean, you got to let go. And it's really hard for you, Dad. It's hard, you know? I would tell you something about your dad you don't know. He spent a lot of time in bed at night worried about you, you know, and now you're going off and he's thrilled and horrified and he's deeply sad too. It's not going to be the same, you know. As a mother said to me recently at my university, my daughter's leaving and she's never coming back as a kid ever again, is she? She'll come back and she won't be the same. She'll be a young woman. You know, she'll never come back as a kid ever. And that's okay, it's good, it's natural. But so I had to do the same with my characters in my novels, just let them go, man. And they would do stuff I didn't want, and I'd be like, oh, no, don't, oh, that guy's a horse's ass, don't do that. Oh, no. But you just keep typing. So at that point, then it ran off. And finally it got out of hand. My characters weren't listening to me at all. So I called a friend of mine who was a novelist and said, this is chaos. They're doing whatever they want. I get this at home, man. I don't need this in my novel. And he goes, so you're telling me that your characters are too real? That's what you're telling me? I was like, yeah, they're doing whatever they want. Nobody's listening to me at all. And he goes, that's not a problem. That's a good thing. That means your novel is alive. You know, if it's just everybody doing whatever they're supposed to do and all the plot things fit together nicely, that's a police procedural. You know, there's other kinds of novels that are wild and cool. And now more and more, I've written several novels now, and I think, you should be surprised. I want to be surprised. I'm typing to find out what's going to happen a lot of the time. And I think that that's actually good. I think probably that slips into the book that the reader should be surprised also, you know. So I finally solved the problem of being a novelist by insisting to myself that I'm not a novelist. I find this very useful. So I'm an essayist who commits novels on the side. So other questions? Back there. Cool shirt.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for coming out and sharing your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it personally.
Thank you.
My
Well,
question,
the $10,000 and a case of wine from Lassiter is really helpful.
of course. My question for you is, what advice would you give to a teenager who is struggling to shed the views of society that we're born with and that we're forced to grow up with? Like, for me, for example, I want to make enough money to put food on the table and have a nice house and not have to worry, but I don't want to, spend my life or sacrifice my life and my happiness in this job or education where I can't be happy, or
I hear you. I hear you.
Okay, you understand what I'm trying
Yeah,
to say.
I understand it real well, believe you me. And I believe you me, I've thought about it, not just for myself. I mean, I'm lucky, as a writer and an editor, I'm a story catcher, and so I get paid a little bit, not much, but enough to get by, and I feel hugely lucky. I don't have to work in an insurance company, and I have had jobs that I hated. And like, I don't have any kind of cool flip wisdom to say, like, oh, you really should do blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
I guess I would ask only of your generation and you, do work that matters somehow. Like, I have friends who are insurance agents and they love it. And one guy said to me, I said, I don't know, doesn't everybody think that your job is boring? He goes, Brian, I take care of people. I take care of people. I'm out there protecting. I extend my arms and play perimeter defense. That's my job, and I like it. I like it. I think it needs to be done, and I'll do it well. I know who you are. I know every aspect of your family. I know every aspect of your chaotic finances, and I'm here to help. I'm here for you. I'm not here to make a bucket of money off of you. I'm here to take care of your family. It's like, man, it just changed everything for me. But don't let, like, the worst trap you could possibly be is, like, all my friends who came out of college and went on to be lawyers, 15 of my friends, and how many are lawyers today? 1.
Exactly.
And why did they go into it? And I think all of them, if they were really honest, would say they went into it for security and for money. And all of them were bored to tears, just bored to tears.
Yeah.
The one who stayed in it loves it, because her job is to say, I will take care of the little guy. I will take care of that single mother with 2 kids who's got nothing. I will take care of her when somebody tries to pick on her. I'm there. And if you could find work that allows you to sing, you know what I mean? I mean, eating is a great habit. You need to eat. Speaking as a dad, you need to get a job, okay? And not just in lifetime, but this summer you need to get a job, and So, but be willing to leave work that's only for money or power. Another thing is status, power, rank, money, security, stability. The more you lean towards security and stability, I would also say, personally, you should take a good long look at yourself at some point and think, what are you afraid of? Why are you afraid? A lot of people I know who are really into security and stability are so because their childhood was chaos and disaster and despair. And they will not accept that in their lifetime for their children. They will not. And I'll have a friend who's going to die, and this guy's going to die of a heart attack in 3 years, and he's going to die rich as hell, and you never met a more unhappy man in your life. But he took care of his kids, and that was the most important thing for him in his whole life. Everything else was 10th. And he's going to live a very unhappy life, I think, and his kids don't like him much. Sad. But he had some weird little flip in his head, Also, never take for granted. I never do. Every other person that you know, their childhood was hell. It just haunts me, I mean, so much. And we don't even talk about this stuff much, Once in a while you see it pop out. I just saw numbers the other day. You know how many women get raped in the United States of America? 1 out of 6. 1 out of 6. Oh. 1 out of 8 boys. Oh. Ugh. Why do we not talk about this? Why? And people, you get damaged as a child. It takes your whole lifetime to try to get back toward the light, man. And I mean, anything you can do to cut past all the rest of this stuff, anything you can do to bring tenderness, mercy, attentiveness, just pay attention. Just pay attention. What in God's name do your teachers, what are they really doing? What are they really, really and truly doing? How much are they teaching you stuff that you need for college? Yeah, I got that. How hard are the people who are working in the library and your principal? What are they really and truly doing? They're here to pay attention to you. They know your name. They know who you are to some degree. You cannot graduate from Lassiter High and not have people dig you, And it seems to me that's a great and glorious thing, that someplace in your life somebody paid attention. I can only imagine how many, if we had enough beer and time, I could go around the room and say, talk to me. Tell me about the scars on your life. Every third person in every row would be able to say to me, you want to hear about a hell childhood? Here you go, pal. So to just have people attend to you and pay attention and witness you and say, I see you, namaste, I see you, I pay attention to you. Tell me, give me your story and I will share some of mine. We will be brothers. Come with me, stand with me, hold hands, let's go. That's a huge and holy thing. If you could find some way to shape that as work, teacher, nurse. The best nuns and priests I've ever met are people who are just like, I'm here. Let's go. How can I help? You know, nurses are going to heaven in a handbasket. You know, so anyway, 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes. One more question, maybe. I feel like I haven't read anything. Yes.
I have a question.
Shoot. Yes, Kim. Oh, Kim, how nice to see you wearing clothes today.
Thank you very much. I knew he was going to say that. Jeez, forgot my question now. No, my question is
Because on Facebook.
But I'll get you for that.
The green bikini works for me. Sorry.
A lot of our students are writing that elusive college entrance
the application essay.
Right? Do you have any advice about that?
Yes, I do. I just talked to our admissions people. I work for the University of Portland, fine institution in Oregon. Oregon, I know it's the other end of the universe, but and one of the things they told me was the application essays they find deeply boring are the really, really good ones that cover all the bases. You know, the really well done application essay that's clearly the person has studied the application essay book and written exactly the kind of application essay that should be successful is the ones they don't pay any attention to. The ones that are real, the ones that are naked, the ones that are genuine, the ones that say something for real, and the ones that don't say, and therefore, that's why I want to go to your college. They're not interested in that. They want to see into your soul if possible, you know. A lot of the reason that you're writing those essays is because you have the slightest idea why you want to go to so-and-so. Why do you want to go to the University of Georgia? There's 2,000 colleges in the United States of America. You can go to any one of them. 90% of what the experience is exactly the same. Why that particular one? Is it a particular thing? Sometimes it's a program. Sometimes it's a place. You know, a lot of kids come to my school because they want to go to Portland. Portland's cool, right? Everybody wears Doc Martens and has to get a tattoo. You know, but just tell a story that's for real. I guess is the one thing you might try. Rather than write an application essay, capital A, capital E, why don't you just sit down and tell me a 500-word story? Let me tell you a story about my grandmother. Try that. Let me tell you a story about a moment when I realized I was a coward and I'll never be a coward again. Let me tell you about a moment when I committed a sin. I knew it was a sin and I didn't do anything about it and I didn't tell anybody. But now, all these years later, I'll be damned if I'll do that again. You know what I mean? And I don't mean like in any kind of religious sense. I'm like I just wrote a piece about how often we see something happening and we just sort of turn and pretend that we didn't see it. That's a sin, isn't it a sin? The sin of omission, right? Be real, I guess, is the one. Try to write a story and not an essay, I guess, is the one piece of advice I would give you. So, anyway, 5 more minutes, I feel like. Yes, ma'am. What are the 3 colors of my magic markers? What does that even mean?
From apostrophism.
What's that?
From apostrophism.
Oh! I forgot that. Oh my God, I have a big honking black. My son Joe, is that in that piece? My son Joey and I actually got on ladders and painted over. There was this huge sign on a wall. Oregon's premier auto body shop. Words this big. It drove us insane. Finally, we got ladders at night and went up and painted over the last E in premier. Right? It's wrong. It's not premier with an E. It's premier without the E. And my son Joe, to his eternal credit's like, we're doing it tonight at midnight, Pop. I was like, I can't climb a ladder anymore. He goes, you're holding the ladder. And we did it. I was so proud of him, you know. My lovely bride's like, oh my God, what if he got arrested? I said, I'd be proud of him. Grammar matters. You know, my father loves that story. My mother hates that story. It just reminds me, I got thrown out of a pub once. My brothers and I all were rejected from a pub in New York together, all at once. All my brothers and I, all at the same time. 7 men ejected at the same time because we were on a balcony. There's a couple below us, a young couple, and the guy is just totally oiling up the young lady. Oh, you and I together. It was just total nonsense. You could just hear it, one lie after another. It was disturbing. And finally, we're watching this thinking, oh my God, that poor girl, should we rescue her from this idiot? And finally, the guy puts his hands on her hands and he goes, hopefully you and I, at which point my brother Tommy lost his temper and jumped over, 6'3", 230-pound ex-college basketball player, jumps over the balcony, lands on their table, smashes the table to bits. There's food everywhere. And he rises up from the detritus. My brothers and I are all looking at this over the balcony with absolute astonishment, right? Oh my God, Tommy just jumped over the balcony. And Tommy rises up, 6'3", and he says to the guy, never, and I mean never, begin a sentence with an adverb. Oh, we wept laughing. Oh my God, we were laughing so hard. And the guy cocks his fist, right? He's ready to get into a little battle, and suddenly, whoosh! All the Doyle brothers are standing behind my brother Tommy. My brother Kevin says, he says to the guy, "I know what you're thinking. It's a bad idea." Out! And so we all got thrown out. My mother hates that story. My father says, "Good grammar should be defended." So answer: black. We have a huge black marker which we carry in the car in case of emergencies. We have a white out marker. And then a dark blue one just in case we have to erase something pretty. So, I can't believe you asked me that. That's embarrassing. So, listen, let me end in the same way we began. You know, in the beginning I said, you don't know me from a hole in the wall, but now you know me too well. and it was one of the most odd and unusual hours of your whole life. But thank you so much for your gift. How sweet that we had a little minute together. To laugh and to tell stories and to share something. You know, when people are together, there's some kind of a thing is possible. You know, and it has nothing to do with me and everything to do with us, it seems to me. So for a moment we were us, in a rare and wonderful way. You know, people invent religions and churches to try to get to some kind of a way to be us, just for a moment. So for your attentiveness, for your witness, for your grace, thank you so much. Take your energy, take your wild gift, and go and use it. Okay? Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Doyle. That was lovely. And as much as you would like to follow his advice to take your gifts and go home, you probably should go back to class instead. Just saying. So thanks you guys very much for your attentiveness. If you'd like to ask any questions or whatever, feel free. Hope we'll see you guys this evening. Thanks.